Part of the fun of fandom is trying to guess what's next. It's like shaking the presents under the tree and trying to see if you can second-guess Santa. Except in this case, Santa is Marvel Studios and Christmas is in July. Spider-Man Far From Home promises to be the final coda of Phase 3 and the Infinity Saga, which means we expect some loose ends to be tied up. One of those might be the MCU origin story of our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Way back when a certain caped crusader dominated the summer box office, a scrappy little company named Marvel Studios got around to collecting up all of the characters they weren't able to sell the rights to, and made the announcement that they were going to create a shared universe. It was a plan so crazy it just might become one of the biggest and most successful movie franchises of all time. It all started with a character that some thought didn't have the recognition of the titles that Marvel already sold, like the X-Men or Spider-Man. Without them, Marvel instead kickstarted the MCU with Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man. 11 years and billions of dollars later, Iron Man is a household name and one of the biggest in the MCU. He left a big metal boot-sized footprint across the shared universe he helped start. And with new heroes set to take center stage in the next chapter of the MCU, Redditor Impulsive Beetle has a theory that Stark's influence is even greater than we know. The theory is based on the hint that supposedly Tony Stark has one more secret to reveal to Peter Parker in Spider-Man Far From Home. This might happen during a moment we see in the trailers, showing a shocked Peter Parker looking through Tony's smart glasses. What Impulsive Beetle believes is being revealed is the secret origin for the spider that bit Peter Parker and turned him into Spider-Man. But why did a radioactive spider give Peter Parker powers instead of a serious rash? Well, according to the theory, it's because the arachnid was more than just radioactive. It was in fact an experiment by none other than Tony Stark himself. The theory goes that the lab that young Peter Parker was visiting was a Stark Enterprises lab, where there was genetic testing being done on various creatures, including a spider. In Spider-Man Homecoming, Peter tells Ned the spider is dead, meaning that the lab had a specimen missing. By reviewing the visitor logs and security footage, it's assumed that Tony Stark would be able to figure out exactly where his spider went and what happened to it. Not sure what would happen next, Tony would keep the young kid under observation, noting his progress. 6 months later, when Tony has a bit of a falling out with his friend Steve Rogers and needs some extra hands, he approaches the young Peter Parker. In Captain America Civil War, we get to see Tony and Peter meet for the first time when he shows up to award Parker the grant he never applied for. While he's there to recruit, it also allows Stark to get some direct information from Parker about how the bite has affected him. This theory fills in some space left out of Civil War. Obviously, in the middle of all that was happening, Tony Stark didn't start combing YouTube looking for superhero recruits. He would have had to have been watching Peter for a while, and this would explain why, outside of professional curiosity. Even with all of his resources, Secretary Ross only gives Tony 36 hours to bring in Barnes and the Renegade Avengers. Though the AI in Spider-Man's suit doesn't appear to come on until the end credits scene, there's still not enough time to make Parker his own new spider suit, especially one that adjusts the eyes. If Tony Stark was monitoring the hero that he accidentally created, then he would have also decided to make that person a suit to assist in his superhero life. Now, Peter Parker is part of the MCU, but there's the tricky part of including parts of Spider-Man's world that are also big elements of the world of Marvel in general. The Daily Bugle is one, but another big one is Oscorp. So far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a few of Marvel's big and sometimes evil corporations have made their stake up against the juggernaut Stark Industries. Roxxon Oil was the power behind the villainy in both Agent Carter and on the first season of the Freeform series Cloak and Dagger. Hammer Industries hired Stark-hating Ivan Vanko to undermine Stark and Aldrich Killian's advanced idea mechanics, created a fake supervillain to occupy Iron Man. But Oscorp's absence is conspicuous now that Peter Parker is a part of the MCU. While the MCU has stated an interest in using some of the villains that haven't been seen in the previous 5 Spider-Man movies, there's some villains who are important parts of Spider-Man's story: Norman Osborn and his son Harry. The elder Osborn is the head of the company Oscorp, but more importantly, he's also the Green Goblin, arguably the signature villain for Spider-Man. He's the one who causes the circumstances of Gwen Stacy's death. With Spider-Man absent from the MCU, so was Oscorp, but this theory allows for the introduction of a character that up to this point has been conspicuously absent. According to the theory, Norman Osborn is a key member of that research that produced the radioactive spider. Differences between the two science egos would mean that Osborn leaves Stark Industries, and in the time between Captain America Civil War and Spider-Man Far From Home, formed his company Oscorp. Of course, we're probably not going to get all that story background in Far From Home, especially if it's all delivered behind Tony's blue blockers. What we're more likely to see is that Tony was responsible for the spider and that he really had been looking after him this entire time, and knew that he was going to be the kind of hero that he would have wanted to be. The theory does tidy up a few things going forward for the MCU, and not just the issues of time management in Civil War. Thematically, both Iron Man and Spider-Man have been motivated by equal amounts of guilt and a sense of responsibility. While the people in Tony's life have been more of the future supervillain variety and less of the wisdom-delivering Uncle Ben kind, he was able to meet Ho Yinsen, who, in sacrificing himself to save Tony, implored him to not waste the life he was given. This inspires Tony to not only get Stark Industries out of the weapons-making business, but to create the Iron Man suit and privatize world peace. It's also his guilt and sense of responsibility that puts him at odds with Steve Rogers when the Sokovia Accords are presented. While there has been a lot of hinting, or in some cases outright saying that Spider-Man was going to take over the role of Iron Man in the MCU, that might also be taking on this emotional through line for the shared universe. Stark admitting his guilt in the creation of Peter Parker's powers and feeling that he's just the person to use the responsibility lines up with a character that's defined by both power and the responsibility that comes with it. And of course, it's a way for Oscorp to appear seemingly out of nowhere. While Stark Industries continued on during the devastation, and there was a lot of rebuilding and reorganizing going on during those 5 years that half of all life was presumed lost, there was still opportunity for a new tech company like Oscorp to take hold and secure itself in the world before the lost half of all life came back. That must have been a logistical nightmare. Half of all life dusting away for 5 years, life insurance policies must have been issued, houses sold, companies closed or restaffed, and then half of all people just come back, having not aged for 5 years. Just scaling the infrastructure back up to where it used to be must have been an immense effort. With far less disruption, the aftermath of the Battle of New York set up both the events of The Defenders and Daredevil on Netflix, with Wilson Fisk using the rebuilding efforts as a way to secure influence in Hell's Kitchen, and help create the villain Adrian Toomes, who became the Vulture after being screwed out of a salvage deal by Tony Stark's damage control. The chaos and gap in time caused by Thanos' shenanigans provides more than just an opportunity for Quentin Beck to bridge realities to our world, or so he says. Mysterio is notorious for making things up. It also opens things up for a whole new batch of baddies to make their way into menacing the MCU going forward. There have been rumors that instead of having one big bad in a massive arc, the next stage for the MCU is to have 2 baddies whose reach extends to more than one solo title. For those on the Earth end of things, that big baddie would be Norman Osborn. Tying Osborn to not only his chief rival, but Iron Man as well, and then by extension the entire MCU, makes a bit of sense. While Osborn has had a special hate for Spider-Man in his heart, he has also been known to take his villainous ways on the road, menacing the entire Marvel Universe when he became the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. This might also be an end run-around rehashing a villain that has appeared in not 1 but 2 Spider-Man franchises so far. If Norman Osborn remains a nebulous corporate threat in the background for Peter Parker, he remains an important part of the Spider's story, while he quietly develops as a villain for everyone else. That could mean we won't see the rocket sled riding Madman until much later in the series after his menace has been properly built up and Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is further in the rearview mirror. This wouldn't be the first time that the origin of Spider-Man has been tinkered with. The Amazing Spider-Man featured an altered take to distinguish it from the near beat-for-beat portrayal in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. But even Raimi messed with the formula eventually as well, changing Uncle Ben's murderer to Sandman to make the story of a random thug villain more personal. And there lies the trap of messing with the Spider-Man formula. Because the story is so well known and so ingrained in the character, changing it makes it not feel like the Peter Parker Spider-Man, but a member of the Spider-Verse instead. The reason that Uncle Ben is the only one who stays dead is because tweaking with the origins of Spider-Man changes who Spider-Man is. There are a number of things that Tony could be revealing to Peter Parker in Far From Home that could set things up for the future, like the formation of Peter's own tech company, Parker Industries, or perhaps something more relevant to the specific movie, like how to defeat Mysterio, or in fact the evidence he needs that Mysterio is actually the villain. Maybe Quentin Beck is the disgruntled Stark employee. And that's one theory about what we'll learn about Tony Stark. What secrets do you want told in Spider-Man Far From Home? What's your theory that you think will come true? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, subscribe to CBR for even more MCU videos. Thanks for watching.